Greetings. Welcome to the PAVmed Incorporated Business Update Conference Call. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. A question-and-answer session will follow the formal presentation. If anyone should require operator assistance during the conference, please press star 0 on your telephone keypad. I will now turn the conference over to your host, Mike Havarilla. You may begin.
Thanks, operator. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike Havarilla, PAVmed's Director of Investor Relations. Thanks for participating in today's business update call. Joining me today on the call are Dr. Lishan Aklog, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, and Dennis McGrath, President and Chief Financial Officer. Before we begin, I'd like to caution comments made during this conference call by management will contain forward-looking statements regarding the operations and future results of PAVmed. I encourage you to review the company's filings with the SEC, which identify specific factors may cause actual results or events to differ materially from those described in the forward-looking statements. Factors that may affect the company's results include, but are not limited to, uncertainties inherent in research and development, including the cost and time required to advance products to regulatory submission, whether and when products are cleared by regulatory authorities, market acceptance of products once cleared and commercialized, company's ability to raise additional capital, and the competitive environment. PAVmed has not yet received clearance from the FDA or other regulatory bodies to market many of its products. PAVmed has been monitoring the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on our business. PAVmed expects the significance of the COVID-19 pandemic, including the extent of its effect on financial and operational results, to be dictated by, among other things, the success of efforts to contain it and the impact of actions taken in response. New risks and uncertainties may arise from time to time or are difficult to predict. All these factors are difficult or impossible to predict accurately. Many of them are beyond the company's control. For a further list and description of these other important risks and uncertainties that may affect future operations, see Part 1, Item 1A, entitled Risk Factors, in PAVmed's most recent annual report on Form 10-K filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and any subsequent updates filed in quarterly reports on Form 10-Q. Except as required by law, PAVmed disclaims any intention or obligation to publicly update or revise any forward-looking statement to reflect changes in expectations or in events, conditions, or circumstances on which those expectations may be based, or that may affect the likelihood that actual results will differ from those contained in the forward-looking statements. With that said, I'd like to turn the call over to Lishan Aklog. Dr. Aklog?
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this quarterly call to update you on our business and discuss our recent financial results. Although it's only been 6 weeks, we've been very active since our last update with many exciting accomplishments and upcoming milestones to report on. As with our last update, let me first start with a few words about the ongoing challenges we're all facing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Start by saying we hope and pray that all of you are holding up as best you can and keeping yourselves and your loved ones safe. Thankfully, all members of the PAVmed family are healthy, safe, and able to continue their important work. Our corporate structure and culture continue to serve us well as we confront these challenges so far with minimal short-term and really no anticipated long-term disruptions to our strategic plan. Before providing you with updates on our product portfolio, let's first discuss how each area of our business has or has not been affected by the pandemic and how we are continuing to respond to those that are affected. On the financial and administrative side, as Dennis will explain in more detail shortly, we recently completed a convertible note financing with the same investor as our previous convertible note financings. We also received proceeds of approximately $300,000 from the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, in the form of a forgivable loan. Our balance sheet is strong and will support our full strategic plan for the foreseeable future as we advance through upcoming milestones. We remain confident in our ability to continue to finance these operations until we begin to generate meaningful revenue through commercial sales or non-dilutive financing through M&A activities. We continue to be laser-focused on cash management. We remain at or under our board-approved budget, and our full-time headcount remains lean at 15. On the product development and manufacturing side, All of our product development and manufacturing partners, fortunately, they number over a dozen, have remained fully operational as essential services, and we've experienced no meaningful disruptions in their activities on our behalf. Our supply chain has also remained intact with one exception. There's a pressure sensor on the CarpX circuit board that's on back order as a result of spike in demand due to the dramatic COVID-19 related ramp up in ventilator production. This will delay the release of the first commercial lot of CarpX devices in the first U.S. clinical cases, but by only a few weeks. On the regulatory front, the pandemic has not impacted any of our regulatory activities, including ongoing work by our regulatory consultants and engagements with the FDA. In fact, as most of you know, the FDA rapidly turned around our CarpX 510K application, clearing CarpX in less than 6 weeks after submission. Two areas where we have successfully managed COVID-19 related disruptions are our commercial and clinical research activities. The commercial side, as you all know, the healthcare system has faced a massive strain on resources as a result of the pandemic, which overwhelmed hospitals and hotspot areas. Non-emergency care, including surgical and diagnostic procedures, came to a standstill. Although we can't predict whether or not future outbreaks will lead to renewed disruptions, the engine is definitely starting up again. Non-emergency procedures are coming back online in most parts of the country, and elective procedures are being performed again in many parts of the country. Although there is a lot of pent-up demand for these services, the pace of the reboot will depend on how new safety measures impact procedural efficiency and when patients believe it's safe to return to medical facilities. I will discuss EsoGuard's commercial activities in more detail later, but I'm proud to say that our commercial team has done an absolutely amazing job adapting to the constraints of the pandemic. We continue to recruit independent sales reps, train them, and have them participate with us in virtual sales calls, opening accounts, and shipping product. We expect procedural volume to start picking up in the coming weeks and months as elective clinical activity ramps up. One of our closest gastroenterology advisors, in fact, today told me that he has a full schedule of endoscopies, which is a good sign. On the clinical research side, nearly all non-COVID-related clinical research, both academic and corporate-sponsored, came to a grinding halt nationwide, in fact worldwide, 2 months ago, which has impacted multiple PAVmed and Lucid clinical trials, which I will summarize later. Work did continue uninterrupted on IRB approvals, as well as negotiating and executing clinical trial agreements. This engine is also starting to rev up again, with centers starting to recruit and enroll patients in our trials over the past week. So I'll start with some recent accomplishments before diving deeper into the individual lead products. Try to limit those to the ones that have occurred since our last update. As I mentioned, in April, we were thrilled to receive 510K marketing clearance from the U.S. FDA for our CarpX minimally invasive carpal tunnel device. This month, we successfully recruited a CarpX national sales manager who has started this week. We enrolled the first 3 patients, including one today, in our international multi-center IVD clinical trials, comparing EsoGuard and EsoCheck to endoscopy at 60 sites in the U.S. and Europe. We submitted our final EsoGuard payment dossier to the largest Medicare contractor, Palmetto GBA, and its molecular diagnostics program, MolDX, an important step in securing payment for EsoGuard. We successfully completed an acute animal study of our EsoCure esophageal ablation device, which I'll describe in detail later. Both PAVmed and Lucid received firm dates for the stage 1 audit of their quality system by our EU notified body, which is a critical step required for us to pursue European Union CE mark clearance for our products. Our subsidiary Solus Diagnostics completed initial benchtop testing of our NDIR laser-based non-invasive blood glucose diagnostic device, demonstrating a linear response across a wide range of glucose concentrations. Finally, our extensive intellectual property portfolio, as always, continues to expand and advance, and now includes over 130 issued and pending patents, either assigned or licensed to PAVmed and its subsidiaries. So what are some of the key upcoming activities and milestones over the coming months? Here are a few highlights. We will commercially launch CarpX and recruit a world-class medical advisory board of hand surgeons. We'll continue to accelerate our EsoGuard commercial activities through an expanding network of independent sales representatives. As medical facilities open up, we'll transition from virtual sales and professional education to in-person engagements, and ultimately procedures. We will submit the EsoGuard coverage dossier, which is a sister to the payment dossier, to Palmetto GBA and other Medicare contractors, and hopefully secure payment and coverage decisions for EsoGuard CPT code as soon as possible. As elective procedures restart, we will accelerate enrollment in our EsoGuard BE1 and 2 trials. We will also launch 4 additional clinical trials involving EsoCheck and PortIO, which have been currently on hold because of COVID-19. We will continue what are now very active M&A and partnership discussions involving NextFlow, EsoGuard, EsoCheck, and Disappear, which we hope to consummate in the coming months. Finally, we hope to achieve the critical accuracy milestone in human and animal testing of Solis's blood glucose diagnostic device, which will allow us to proceed down and initiate a commercial development path. I'd like to provide now some more specific updates across our 4 divisions, which are GI health, minimally invasive interventions, infusion therapy, and emerging innovations. So starting with GI health, our GI health division is building a family of complementary products, EsoGuard, EsoCheck, and EsoCure, which are designed to diagnose and treat conditions of the esophagus. These include the spectrum of conditions, including Barrett's esophagus, which arise from gastroesophageal reflux disease, or GERD, G-E-R-D, also known as chronic heartburn or reflux, and can lead to highly lethal esophageal cancer. The other area we are targeting with these products is eosinophilic esophagitis, a very common but underappreciated allergy-mediated condition that's similar and related to inflammatory bowel disease, which currently requires multiple invasive endoscopies during the course of treatment. Last week marked the 2-year anniversary of the founding of our subsidiary, Lucid Diagnostics, which licensed the EsoGuard and EsoCheck technologies from our partners at Case Western Reserve University. I really can't say how proud I am of what our team and our partners have been able to accomplish in really a short period of time. EsoGuard and EsoCheck are now commercially available diagnostic tools. We added EsoCure, a groundbreaking complementary technology from our Emerging Innovations division, and this is making rapid progress, and we hope to commercialize this in 2021. In addition, we're pursuing active research programs and partnership discussions for other products in the space, including other biomarker tests, and I ask you to stay tuned on that front. For those of you who are new to PAVmed and Lucid, EsoGuard and EsoCheck are groundbreaking products. They're designed to facilitate early detection of Barrett's esophagus, precancerous changes that are called dysplasia, and then highly lethal esophageal cancer, and to do so using a non-invasive office-based test. Although screening is recommended in over 10 million high-risk GERD patients to detect and treat Barrett's before it progresses to cancer, fewer than 10% actually undergo screening using invasive upper endoscopy. The tragic consequence of this is that the vast majority of patients diagnosed with esophageal cancer are just not aware that they have underlying Barrett's, and that the progression of cancer could have been prevented through careful monitoring and treatment if the Barrett's had been diagnosed earlier. Over 80% of these patients will ultimately die of their esophageal cancer within 5 years. The potential life-saving impact of EsoGuard and EsoCheck has been acknowledged by the National Cancer Institute, which highlighted them as one of the year's significant advances in cancer prevention in its 2020 report to Congress, and the FDA, which granted these products breakthrough device designation earlier this year. EsoCheck was also a 2020 Edison Award winner, recognized as among the best new medical device products of the year. Just a brief overview, again, for those of you who are just learning about us on how these devices work. EsoCheck is an FDA-cleared cell collection device which can perform targeted and protected sampling of cells from the lining of the lower esophagus as part of a 5-minute non-invasive office-based procedure. It serves as an alternative to invasive upper endoscopy, which is performed under anesthesia in a hospital or a dedicated endoscopy center. EsoGuard is a highly accurate DNA test which detects epigenetic changes which occur in patients along the Barrett's to esophageal cancer spectrum. EsoGuard is performed on samples collected with EsoCheck and is commercially available in the U.S. as a laboratory-developed test, or an LDT. Our commissioned market assessments have estimated the addressable domestic market opportunity for these products to be several $billion based on very modest penetration of U.S. GERD patients already recommended for BE screening. We are commercializing EsoGuard using a hybrid model with internal sales management, marketing, and professional education, working closely with independent sales reps. The commercial team has grown rapidly since EsoGuard formally launched 5 months ago. Our Chief Commercial Officer, Director of Marketing and Communications, and our Eastern and Western sales managers are partnered with a rapidly growing network of highly experienced independent sales reps covering most of the country. These are all senior professionals averaging at least a dozen years in the field, most with leading companies and with long-standing relationships with gastroenterologists in their territory. We are now currently up to 30 independent sales reps under contract and are adding new ones every week. Over the last 2 weeks, the number of virtual sales calls with their physicians has increased dramatically as COVID-19 restrictions relax and in anticipation of restarting elective procedures. They have made contact with several hundred accounts, and the response broadly from the gastroenterology community has been extremely positive. We are now back to accepting new account applications this week, and our logistics provider has been shipping product to new sites as well. Next week will mark our first virtual training for one of our sites in the Midwest. We feel strongly that in the short term, this will be a successful way to get accounts up and running, and will continue until we're allowed to do on-site support as regulations lift. We're also recruiting clinical support specialists in anticipation of this reopening. We continue our aggressive marketing campaign in professional journals and social media, targeting physicians and patients to strengthen EsoGuard and EsoCheck brand recognition, generate awareness of the underlying conditions, and support the sales process. In addition, we will start to begin highlighting the clear advantages of our products over the alternatives in the coming months. The engagement with these activities has been excellent and growing, and the feedback has been very positive. We also continue to make solid progress on the reimbursement front. EsoGuard received a CPT code last year and successfully advanced through the CMS process, allowing us to proceed with payment and coverage discussions following a so-called gap-filled designation. We have successfully engaged with Palmetto GBA, the largest Medicare contractor, and its molecular diagnostics group, MolDX. These efforts follow two parallel paths, payment and coverage. We have submitted the final payment dossier supporting our fee request, and will submit the final coverage dossier in the coming weeks. We're optimistic that we will receive favorable decisions on both payment and coverage. 2 days ago, we reached an exciting milestone in the development of our EsoCure esophageal ablation device. EsoCure is a disposable, single-use thermal balloon ablation catheter that's designed to advance through the working channel of a standard endoscope and uses our patented CALDUS technology to ablate esophageal tissue. Once cleared and commercialized, EsoCure would allow clinicians to treat dysplastic Barrett's or dysplasia before it can progress to cancer, and to do so without the need for complex and expensive capital equipment. The current leader in this large and high-margin market is the Medtronic Barrett's radiofrequency device, which requires an expensive piece of capital equipment and disposable ablation tools, multiple disposable ablation tools, most of which are too large to pass through the endoscope's working channel. We first completed bench testing of this working prototype, which consistently achieved ablation temperatures over 90 degrees centigrade within 10 seconds, significantly higher and more rapidly than the Medtronic radiofrequency device. This week, we successfully completed initial animal testing of the prototype. The results were stunning as the device performed exactly as designed. Although final pathologic analysis is pending, the device consistently performed clear circumferential ablation without charring over very short time intervals compared to what is required with existing expensive radiofrequency and cryo platforms. We expect to complete development and FDA 510K submission of EsoCure by early 2021 and hope to have it commercialized later that year. On the EsoGuard and EsoCheck clinical trial fronts, activities are starting to gear up following COVID-related slowdowns. Our two international multi-center clinical trials, EsoGuard BE1 and 2, are designed to support a future PMA submission for FDA registration of EsoGuard and EsoCheck as in vitro diagnostic or IVDs, and includes over 60 sites in the U.S. and Europe. The screening study, BE1, has enrolled 3 patients, including one today, with 3 additional patients scheduled this month. We anticipate the reopening of sites in accordance with the CDC, state, and professional society guidance to be staggered over the next several weeks based on a few factors, including the type of practice, so private versus larger academic institutions, and the acceptance of research patients back on campus. The team is currently building a new enrollment forecast, which will drive the overall timeline. We've also executed on multiple contingencies, which have played a key role in allowing us to keep our original timeline intact. We anticipate that nearly all of our sites will be enrolling in the coming months. The larger institutions, as expected, will take more time to reconfigure their infrastructure in order to gear up for research. 2 additional EsoCheck clinical trials are on hold, but should also begin enrolling soon. The first study at the Fred Hutch Cancer Center in Seattle is looking at the role of EsoCheck and biomarkers designed to detect progression from non-dysplastic to dysplastic Barrett's. This work could greatly facilitate the surveillance of Barrett's patients so they can be treated prior to the development of cancer. And we, as we previously announced, we secured the exclusive option to license these biomarkers if they prove effective in the clinical trial. The University of Pennsylvania study, a different study, will look at the role of EsoCheck in monitoring treatment in patients with eosinophilic esophagitis. Finally, we have 2 active partnership discussions involving GI health products. We have strong interest from an established diagnostic company outside the U.S. to perform and market EsoGuard in that region. We'll be revisiting that once COVID-related travel restrictions ease up. We also have been offered the opportunity to license highly accurate eosinophilic esophagitis biomarkers from a major academic medical center for commercialization as an LDT, and we look forward to consummating that in the near future. So moving on to our minimally invasive interventions division, which encompasses CarpX. Last month, less than 6 weeks after submission, we were very excited to announce that we'd received FDA 510K marketing clearance for our CarpX single-use disposable minimally invasive device designed to treat carpal tunnel syndrome. Carpal tunnel syndrome is a widely prevalent condition that exacts a very large clinical and economic burden on society. The balloon catheter is inserted under the scarred ligament, tensioning it while pushing the nerve and tendons away. When activated, bipolar radiofrequency electrodes precisely cut the ligament from the inside out in a matter of seconds. So now CarpX is now the first and only 510K cleared minimally invasive device to utilize common catheter, balloon, and wire techniques to facilitate carpal tunnel release. We believe CarpX will revolutionize the treatment of carpal tunnel syndrome by dramatically reducing recovery times compared to traditional open surgery, an estimated $1 billion U.S. market opportunity based on an estimated 600,000 patients currently undergoing invasive carpal tunnel surgery and many more who suffer in silence. As we previously announced, CarpX performed very well in the human clinical safety study we performed in New Zealand and submitted to the FDA. All the patients who completed follow-up met the study's pre-specified safety and effectiveness endpoints. Additional pre-specified outcome assessments were similar to or better than expected results from a traditional open surgery. Importantly, procedural times fell after a short learning curve, indicating that the CarpX procedure can be performed in the same or less time as traditional open surgery. We have recruited a CarpX national sales manager, Dan Dargis, who we're excited is starting this week. Dan has decades of commercial experience in the orthopedic space and strong ties to both hand surgeons and a vast network of independent sales reps calling on these surgeons. Dan is helping us recruit a world-class advisory board of hand surgeons who will perform the initial U.S. cases, lead our professional education activities, and advise us on iterative procedure and product development. And he's also beginning his outreach to his network of independent sales reps. Our commercial launch, as I mentioned, has been delayed a few weeks because of the pressure sensor that's on back order, but we look forward to that launch in the coming weeks and months. Next, some brief highlights from our infusion therapy division, which includes NextFlow and PortIO. NextFlow is a platform technology to deliver highly accurate infusions. We are pursuing a broad range of applications: inpatient infusions, disposable infusion pumps for home use, prepackaged outpatient drug infusions, military and trauma applications, and intravenous nutrition. The application which is furthest along is the NextFlow IV, or intravenous infusion set, which delivers highly accurate gravity-driven infusions independent of the height of the IV bag. We believe it will eliminate the need for complex and expensive electronic infusion pumps for most, not all, but most of the estimated 1 million infusions delivered each day in the United States. We're making really excellent progress with the NextFlow IV infusion sets, design, control, development, and testing, and we're targeting FDA 510K submission before the end of the year. NextFlow also remains the subject of very active M&A discussions with key strategics in this space, particularly in the disposable infusion pump space for home use, as well as prepackaged drug infusion applications. Onto PortIO. PortIO is our implantable intraosseous vascular access device, which allows direct access to the bone marrow to deliver medications, fluids, and other substances, addressing an estimated $750 million market opportunity based on patients with poor veins and those with renal failure, kidney failure, whose veins must be carefully preserved for current or future dialysis. We are now seeking an initial short-term implant duration indication through the FDA's De Novo pathway. Earlier this year, we participated in a successful pre-submission meeting with the FDA focused on the clinical protocol for a single-center clinical safety study. We had planned to perform this study in New Zealand like we did with CARPEX, but because of travel restrictions, we're moving it to the U.S., and we'll be submitting an IDE or an investigational device exemption application to the FDA soon. We still do plan to perform a long-term study in Colombia, South America, to replicate the remarkable animal study results which we documented, showing 6-month patency of the PortIO device, completely free of any maintenance or flushes. We have locked down 3 sites in Colombia and have 3 principal investigators and hope to begin training and enrolling once things open up. And once again, time forces me to just touch on the exciting projects we're working on in our Emerging Innovations division, but a few highlights. As I mentioned, Solus Diagnostics Research and Development Plan for our non-invasive NDIR laser-based blood glucose monitoring technology is progressing very well. The working prototype has been completed and has been tested in a benchtop model. These fairly recent results show a very nice linear response curve across a wide range of glucose concentrations. We expect to complete human and animal testing in the coming weeks. And if that goes well and we achieve our target accuracy thresholds, we'll be able to proceed on a commercial development plan. Our Disappear resorbable pediatric ear tubes that are made from aqueous silk technology and seek to revolutionize the care of the estimated 1 million children who undergo bilateral ear tube placement each year is also progressing. The limiting factor that has stalled our activities over the recent past has been securing a commercial partner who has the capacity on a scalable basis to process silk into molded ear tubes. We've made good progress on that and expect to secure such a partnership shortly. Our Emerging Innovations team is also working on several other exciting earlier stage products, including products in the ECMO, cardiopulmonary support space, and ventilator space. The ECMO cannula project has had some important breakthroughs in the last week, and we're very excited about that. And the ventilator R&D project was launched this week. So I'll stop there and pass the mic on to Dennis for a review of our financial results.
Thanks, Lishan, and good afternoon, everyone. I'll be brief as our preliminary results for the quarter ended March 31st, 2020 were reported in a press release that was published earlier this afternoon. Our quarterly report on Form 10-Q will be available at the SEC.gov and on our website early next week. The complexities involved with accounting for the non-cash charges related to our first quarter convertible debt financing, coupled with lawyers, auditors, consultants, and staff working remotely, made the extension unavoidable. You'll recall that even as late as the end of April, we were completing the S-3 registration for that financing, which also was the gateway to the additional $4 million convertible debt financing on April 30th. So with regard to the preliminary financial results, research and development expenses for the first quarter of 2020 were $2.6 million, up from $1.5 million for the same period in 2019, and $300,000 higher sequentially. The year-over-year increase reflects incremental hiring, Chief Medical Officer, Chief Operating Officer for Lucid Diagnostics, and a regulatory professional for PAVmed, as well as approximately $1 million in clinical trial costs, principally related to EsoGuard, as the setup costs and first patient enrollment costs for the 2 IVD clinical trials began in earnest. General and administrative expenses were $2.6 million for the first quarter of 2020, compared with $1.7 million for the same period in 2019. They were higher by about $300,000 sequentially. The sequential increases reflect the financing transaction costs in the first quarter related to completing the November 2019 convertible debt financing, and the year-over-year increase reflects about $300,000 increase in compensation-related costs, purely related to sales staffing levels and other sales-related costs, and approximately $500,000 in consulting services related to patents, regulatory compliance, legal processes for contract review, and public company expenses. There's also an increase of about $100,000 in general business expenses. PAVmed reported a net loss attributable to common stockholders of $14.5 million, or a loss of 33 cents per common share. However, as I'll detail for you in a minute, $10 million of this loss is driven by non-cash charges related to our financing, and furthermore is fueled by our stock price climbing significantly. Our press release provides substantially more detail related to the non-cash charges occurring in the current and prior periods. Also, the press release provides a table entitled Non-GAAP Measures, which highlights these amounts along with interest expense and other non-cash charges, namely depreciation, stock-based compensation, financing-related costs, to give you a better understanding of the company's financial performance. You will notice from that table that after adjusting the GAAP loss by approximately $10 million for these type of non-cash or financing-related charges, the company reported a non-GAAP adjusted loss for the 3 months ended March 31st of $4.5 million, or 10 cents per common share. Particularly, I want to point out that the largest non-cash charge, an approximate $8 million expense in this group of non-GAAP expenses, is the change in the fair value of the convertible debt. God bless accountants, right? Although this in part reflects the increase in funding for the period, it is principally influenced by the stock price more than doubling between the time we entered into this transaction in November 2018 and the end of the first quarter. Essentially, a good thing for shareholders, that is a sizable increase in our stock price, will cause increased charges to the P&L only while the convertible debt is still outstanding. PAVmed had cash of $8.7 million as of March 31st. However, subsequent to the quarter end, and just a couple weeks ago, the company received an additional net proceeds of approximately $3.7 million from the sale of convertible notes at a conversion price of $5 per share. So on a pro forma basis, had the financing closed at the end of March, cash would have been over $12 million. So with that, operator, we can now open up the call to any questions.
At this time, we will be conducting a question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad. A confirmation tone will indicate your line is in the question queue. You may press star 2 if you would like to remove your question from the queue. For participants using speaker equipment, it may be necessary to pick up your handset before pressing the star keys. One moment, please, while we pull for questions. Our first question is from Anthony Vendetti from Maxim Group. Please proceed with your question.
Good afternoon, Anthony.
Hey, good. Good afternoon, Lishan. Good afternoon, Dennis. How you doing?
Great. I'm doing great.
Thanks for the overview. That was very helpful, and for all the detail. Lishan, I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about the backlog pressure sensor for CarpX. You said you think it's a few weeks that it's backlogged. Can you give us a little more color about?
Yeah, I think from I was just being direct about that, but I think from a practical point of view, it's not going to change a whole lot because the elective procedures are still ramping up slowly. So the delay was a few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. We expect the component, the printed circuit board, which has the pressure sensor on it, to be around in a couple of weeks, and then a couple of weeks after that before the commercial lot could be released. So really in terms of when we would have expected the carpal tunnel surgeries are elective procedures and will come online over the coming months. It doesn't really delay our commercial launch from a practical point of view, but just thought I'd point that out, that is one aspect of our supply chain that we've had to monitor closely.
Okay, yeah, no, that's helpful. Like you said, elective procedures have been largely postponed or delayed. So I guess as you just hired a new sales manager for CarpX, what's the thought process in terms of a commercialization strategy as we start to reopen as a country? Is this more like a July, August time frame, slow ramp up with KOLs, and then is it more of a September or so full commercial launch?
Yeah, I mean, probably won't be able to give you sort of specific dates, but I think that's a sort of a reasonable summary. CarpX, unlike EsoGuard and EsoCheck, is an interventional procedure, right? So you have to be careful in the early launch and make sure that you identify the appropriate early adopters to take through the procedural steps, and to be frank, to do iterative enhancements of the procedure itself. So that's really Dan's first task, is to get that group of KOLs and experienced folks who are committed to being early adopters of this technology and to start doing cases. And I do think sort of a midsummer time point for that is appropriate. The ramp from that is going to be affected by a variety of factors. One is, how does the ramp up, the opening of elective cases actually proceed? We're fairly optimistic because outpatient facilities, which is where the vast majority of carpal tunnel surgeries are performed, are less burdened in terms of their ability to reopen. But it'll depend really on that, as well as sort of a steady, focused but safe sort of outreach to increasing concentric circles of physicians. And it's very important to do that in a very careful way to make sure that the procedure is being performed carefully and that people are being appropriately trained.
Okay, makes sense. And then just in terms of commercialization of EsoCheck, EsoGuard, what's been the COVID-19 impact on that, and then how do you expect that to continue to roll out for this year?
Yeah, sorry. So the COVID impact has been pretty straightforward, which is that no one's getting, for the last 2 months, there have been essentially no elective or non-emergent procedures being performed in the GI offices, so whether they're endoscopies or other office-based procedures. But what's amazing is I sort of was bragging about this and like to brag about it again, is that the team was not in any way, they were able to overcome that challenge. And despite that, I've had literally contacts with hundreds of accounts and numerous virtual sales calls. These physicians, I think, as I mentioned last time, are not necessarily on the front lines of COVID, so they have time and they're getting used to using telemedicine. And so these virtual calls have gone remarkably well, and the volume has increased almost exponentially. So as the elective procedures start, and as I said, one of our partners in Ohio did a full day of endoscopies today, so that to me was a very good sign that things are starting to open up. Then that activity of opening accounts and getting product shipped will actually start to translate, I think, very soon into actual cases being performed and tests being ordered and sent. Again, there's still some uncertainty, but there's some pretty good signs in the last week or two that this activity will start to ramp up, hopefully fairly quickly.
Okay, great. That's helpful. And then Dennis, if we could put aside the non-cash charges, but we just talk about sort of the burn rate that you see right now. What's your best guess as to what you expect that to be on a per quarter basis for the remainder of this year, and then what do you expect your capital requirements to be as you move into as you move through this year and into next year?
If you dissect the first quarter, there's some clues there in terms of how that projects going forward. It a $4.4 million non-GAAP, which you can make it'd be a proxy for what the cash burn for the quarter is. And it gave you the data point that about $1.1 million were clinical trials related to that, about $1 million of it EsoGuard related. So the baseline burn is just around $1 million. The clinical trials will add to that. That really now is dependent upon when we can get to that. The plan for the year was about a $1.7 million or so per month. We have $12 million pro forma at March 31st, so you can kind of lay that in. There's availability in multiple forms of financing for us, and that will be dictated by not only the ability to finance at the parent level, but the possibility of financing inside the subsidiary level, and also the non-dilutive financing opportunities that we're pursuing, particularly with NextFlow. So the ability to finance that, we believe, is readily available. Which choices we make of those opportunities will be dependent upon the timing of when they come about and when we get back to kind of full-scale clinical trial work.
Okay. Very helpful. Thank you. I'll hop back in the queue. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Anthony.
Thanks, Anthony.
And our next question is from Chris Sommers from the Sommers team. Please proceed with your question.
Chris, good afternoon.
Lishan and Dennis, hope you guys are well. Congrats on all the recent accomplishments and milestones, and seems like there's an exciting year or two ahead here.
I think we
agree with you.
And I see stuff that's happening maybe at a trial or a study at UPenn, so you guys might be in Philadelphia a little bit more. But my question kind of relates to, I guess, that the third question that the Maxim analyst just had, as far as the planning for funding these trials. And it seems like there's a lot, maybe additional funding, that Lucid might require, for the ESO product. I mean, it seems like, and you probably can't comment too much, but, with that much activity and with that much, funding potentially, can you comment at all about the potential, spinoff, of Lucid? I mean, it certainly seems like the most, kind of common or the best strategic, I mean, you guys would know better, opportunity, to fund that company, separately. Investors can be in that separately, and would be, a great way, to raise cash for that company separately as well and unlock, value, tremendous value for the company.
Hey, before Dennis answers, Chris, let me clarify one thing as it relates to these clinical trials. So, as you said, there are numerous clinical trials, but the bulk of the expense is really in the two IVD trials that are looking to support a PMA submission. Many of the other trials are actually part of partnerships with academic medical centers where we're providing only nominal financial support, and we're able to leverage the value of EsoCheck, and we're providing EsoCheck as a device. And many of those actually have their own intramural academic funding as well. So just to be clear that it's really the bulk of the capital requirements are really on the EsoGuard IVD trials. Dennis, did you want to follow up?
Yeah. So yes, Chris. Obviously, there's been a lot of speculations. I got a lot of questions about Lucid and the EsoGuard being the key jewel inside that subsidiary, and the approaches to finance that inside that subsidiary, whether it's a spin out, it's a private investment in there, gets financed at the parent level, or there are other ways to finance that that may not require issuing securities to do it. No decision has been made. We are talking to a variety of financial types that fit all of those profiles. And, once we have a little bit more visibility on some of those choices, then the board's going to make a decision. So I think we're in agreement that there's a lot of excitement about that technology. And there are some proxies of other companies that have done similar things with products that are not competitive with EsoGuard, but serve kind of the same mindset. And those prospects are very encouraging, and that certainly helps in our flexibility of trying to make the right choice for our shareholders. So no decisions at this point. We'll keep you apprised as those decisions are made, and we believe they're all favorable outcomes. So we're just trying to figure out what's the best approach out of all those treasures.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the for that answer. And again, congrats on the accomplishments, and so much to look forward to in the future. You guys are it's pretty remarkable. So kudos.
Thanks, Chris.
You bet.
And again, if anyone has any questions, you may press star 1 on your telephone keypad. Our next question is from Dan Patty Jessic, who is a private investor. Please proceed with your question.
Dan, good afternoon.
Dan.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, and thank you for your hard work. And I feel guilty riding your coattails. You guys are amazing.
Don't feel guilty.
I'm a long-term investor. I don't know if I heard this right. I was listening to the conference call. Did you guys mention the glucose monitor, the laser? Did you say you had a prototype device you're going to test this summer?
Yeah.
Did I hear that right?
Let me fill in some of those details. I did touch on it, but again, just try to keep it a bit brief. So the device that the technology we licensed from our partners at Airware, the Dr. Jacob Wong's company. We've licensed that within a field of use to create inpatient hospital-based continuous glucose monitoring without the need for doing blood tests, without finger sticks or without blood draws, just by a clamp on the skin that's similar to one of these oximetry devices, the ones that clip on your finger. So where we are with that is we've been working on this R&D project, taking the laser technology that he developed and putting it into a working prototype, basically in a box that have the lasers configured consistent with the invention. That's been completed, and we also have a prototype clip, tissue clamp, that basically will be applied to the web of the hand. So that device has been tested on the benchtop using these little tubes, these little cuvettes of glucose at varying concentrations. And the key is, if you do the concentrations across the range that you would be looking at in the patient, do you get a linear response? So when the glucose is higher, you get more of a signal. When glucose is higher than that, you get more of a signal, and it follows a nice linear response. And we have been able to document that just over the last week or two. The next step is, and we were hoping to get this done this week, but it's been delayed a couple of weeks, but not too long, is to actually take that box, that working prototype, and test it on human volunteers who basically start off fasting and then take some orange juice and see how their blood sugar goes up, and also in a rat model, a diabetic rat model, animal model, where we can get much higher glucose levels and confirm that the non-invasive testing works. There are very precise standards for accuracy that all glucose monitoring devices are held to. It's about plus or minus 15%. So we're pretty optimistic that we'll get to that, and once we cross that threshold, then the gun goes off, and we can actually start a formal commercial development process where we manufacture a device that can be used in a hospital, typically in an ICU setting, and continuously monitor glucose. So that's where things are with that, and as I said, we're very excited about it.
Wow, that's huge. What do you think?
It's a big opportunity, yeah.
It's huge because I know so many people that hate to get their finger pricked. My daughter hates needles. And then you could do this for at-home use. Is that what you're looking for?
Well, that would be the next step. So just to be clear, the initial license is only for the hospital, but that's a big market. So in the ICU, particularly in cardiac ICUs, 100% of the patients there are on an insulin drip. So they're getting their blood sugar checked literally hourly, or every other hour. So there's a huge opportunity in that sense. But obviously the next step in this would be to take this technology for use in an inpatient setting and then license it, continue to expand the license so that we can replace, home finger stick devices, the sort of deck of card size boxes that that wouldn't require a finger stick, but could measure your glucose just by clamping onto the skin. But that's the
How much
next
is that
step.
worth?
We're not there yet, just to be clear.
How much is that worth?
I'll leave that up to you to figure out. It's a big market.
Huge. I don't think people realize it's huge. But I'm sorry, I'm excited. But
Okay.
that's all I have for you guys.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I love riding your coattails. Thank you so much.
Here, Dan. Thanks.
Thanks.
And our next question is from Mahzouz Ahmed, who is a private investor. Please proceed with your question.
Mahfouz, good afternoon.
Hi, Dr. Lishan. Hi, Dennis.
Hi, Mahfouz. How are you?
Hello.
How are you guys doing? I'm very good. Thank you so much. I'm just going to be very brief. I just want to ask you, how much has this been charged for per device of Cortex?
We have not.
Have you guys decided?
We have not set a price, but what we can tell you is based on our understanding of the reimbursement as well as the cost of goods, that we are confident that we'll be able to commercialize at volume, so not necessarily in the early stages when volume production is low, but at higher volumes, we'll be able to achieve an 80-85% gross margin. So that is plenty of margin for us to build a very robust business on that.
Got it. Okay, all right, guys. Thank you so much, and thank you for the great work. I'm really excited for everything that you guys have done, and I'll get back to the queue. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
And we have reached the end of the question and answer session, and I will now turn the call over to management for closing remarks.